Hello, I'm Manuel Garcia, and this is my presentation on workplace diversity. So, a big thing about the workplace now is that you don't go into a place and see a commonality as much anymore. Why is that? Because we are now looking for resources that everyone can bring something different to the table. Some things that we look for is going to be based on the experience, the level, the knowledge, previous work life, and all different sorts. So, what is workplace diversity? The first thing we need to understand is that workplace diversity is something that a company intentionally does because they understand that everyone has different traits, knowledge, skills, abilities, and leadership capabilities. And this can be not just race, ethnicity, or anything of that sort, but it can be gender, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, education, and other attributes. So, going back to that, what do people bring to the table? We weren't all raised in the same house. We weren't all raised going to the same neighborhoods, schools, or even had the same life experiences. We may have some commonalities, but everyone's life was different. Everyone's life was unique to them. So, based on those experiences, it is easy to say and easy to know that everyone has a different value. Everyone has a different set of experience, knowledge, increased creativity, and a wider range of skills. For example, if I was raised on a farm, then I would have a different set of skills to someone who's never been on a farm. I may be able to be, handy with tools or anything of that sort if I was raised by a family who was in the tech industry and they were really knowledgeable in doing network communications and anything of that sort. Our skills would vary. But the goal that we have in hand is to complete the task that the company wants for us. In order to be successful, there's a couple things that we need to acknowledge, and some of them I already touched on. The first one, we don't all come from the same backgrounds. Coming from different backgrounds doesn't mean that we can't get along. We all have different communication styles. Now, this is something that you can see across the nation as we tend to travel across America. You can see that some people are close range talkers, or they come from a family of huggers. Now, that was different for me. My past wife, she came from a family of huggers. We were not huggers. So that was something that was very different of a communication style for me. Another thing that we have to acknowledge, and some of us have experience with, is we all have a different way of learning. I cannot sit and just read something. I am a hands-on learner. How do you learn? It could be by reading, visualizing, and then practicing. Some people can just pick things up by reading it once. Not everyone learns the same, and that is okay. So just because someone learns a little bit differently than us doesn't mean that that we can't find a way to get a project done. With that kind of leads into this next dimension, is that we do not all think the same. Thinking the same would be boring. How boring would life be if we all had the same thoughts, perspective, opinions? What would life be if we all thought the same? It would not be anything. It would not be a fun life. We would all have this. If we ran into a roadblock and we all thought the same, there would be our project deadlines could be expanded. We could not reach the task that we needed to get done. So it is important to understand that we do not all think the same, and which leads to another topic, is that we may not be all comfortable with the same thing. One idea that's good for you may not be good for the other. So we want to be respectful to that, and we want to be respectful of all these traits because we all bring something to the table. Now, this is something that workplace diversity it's a sensitive topic because sometimes we may not be comfortable with a certain set of practices that someone does, but we can learn to grow as a unit together. Now, just on slide number, I have slide number 5 here. This is just a quick breakdown of what our nation looks like right now. So, some cultural and ethnic differences is we are a melting pot. Yes, America has people from all over the world. 76% of those people who are currently working in the U.S. this is before COVID times, of course, let me go ahead and state that, 70% or 76% of them identify them as white. Okay, that's kind of a big number. 17.8% identify as Hispanic or Latino. 13.3% identify as Black or African American. 5.7% identify as Asian. 2.6% are two or more races. 1.3% American Indian. Now, this is just a quick breakdown. There's not really anything to take from that, but I just want to show that we are a melting pot. Because this is important to touch on, is each one of those cultures has a sense of pride within them. So, for example, they may celebrate religions or holidays differently due to religion, or they may eat a certain way, or they may look at family a different way, which all breaks down, again, that it's diversity. So there may be, like, Chinese New Year may not be the same as the rest, but we respect that, and then we know that certain gathering can bring something else to the table. So this is just one aspect of a breakdown that needs to be acknowledged in the workplace of cultural diversity. Now, going back, differences in language and communication. How do we use our words? Are we direct? Are we timid? Are we shy? Do we tend to stray from the bullet point that we're trying to hit? How are we understanding those words? It's something that you really have to take light to, is when you start thinking about the words that we use, we all assume that everyone understands the words that we do. That is not the case. We can sometimes have an emotional tie into some words, so sometimes that can have a negative connotation. So it's really important, really clear that when you're speaking, that your word choice is picked correctly and that your words are used clearly. And always ask if clarification is needed. So we need to understand that not everyone can understand the words that we're using. Another important factor that we're going to run into with diversity is what channel's being used. Now, this goes back again, this all ties into each other. So, what channel's being used? Now, this is something that people are adapting to. Some people, maybe older generations, were comfortable using and writing letters. Not very often is the current workplace and market writing hand letters. I can't think of the last time I wrote a letter. So what is the most current form of communication right now, and that most people are used with? Email. Straight and simple. Now, someone who, I'll take my mom for instance, is very, very intimidated with sending emails. Now, that is something that's brought into the communication channel, but also can lead into the next topic once I get into, is the generational. So, what are you comfortable with? Some people may not be comfortable with public speaking. Some people may not be comfortable with instant messaging. And that is something that everyone communicates a little bit differently. But one thing that we have to consider is the more technology that is used, it's hard to get a good understanding of context of when that's being said. It's not uncommon that an email, or especially a text message, is understood incorrectly from how the sender wanted to send that message. So it could be taken out of context. So sometimes they add LOL or something of some kind of an abbreviation. Now, if I were to write LOL to someone of an older generation, would they understand that acronym? Do they understand, or do they think that it's just a typo saying LOL? So some people understand that it's a laugh out loud and that it's meant whatever the previous message to lighten it up a little bit. Now, another thing that goes into cultural differences is body language and distance. Some cultures do not like it and can find it rude or intimidating if they are, let's say, speaking too close, too far, or you standing over them. Is that a power thing? And that's not only cultural, that could be done from a male-female perspective. As me as a male, I'm a bigger gentleman. If I am standing over a woman, could she think that she is threatened or that I'm trying to intimidate her? So I have to be very cognizant and realize, what message am I trying to convey? Could this be misinterpreted? And is my body language appropriate? Body language is a significant part of how people will interpret the message that we're trying to say. So, if someone is just giving you a stray evil look or just refusing to even give you eye contact, it could give you a bunch of different messages. My eye contact or lack of eye contact can really engage with the listener. If someone is telling me a message and I'm just looking at my phone, like we all tend to do right here, having a phone, they may think that they're being disrespected. I'm listening to them, but because I'm looking at my phone and they're having a conversation with me, they may think that I'm not paying attention to them. And it's rude, but unfortunately, this is becoming the norm. We are attached to these little cell phone devices, and that is changing the way that communication is being observed and being interpreted. So that's something that we really need to pay attention to. Now, because of that, I did put on a couple slides. This is on slide 6 now, and I wanted to go over something about this. So, how is your body language being presented? Now, I'm going to start with the bottom left. Now, this is a gentleman that I do not know, so I'll start there. And he was found on a Google image search. If someone is crossing their arms and you're having that conversation with them, do you feel that they are accepting of the words that you're trying to tell them? That's something that we need to think about. So, does he look like he wants to listen to you? Maybe, maybe not. So that's something that you really need to be aware of in your body language when you're setting the tone to listen, to engage, and be really in tune with what your body is saying. Now, another thing, so I have a sequence of pictures here from a female in here. So this is the picture to the right. If the first picture, pretty calm, collective, looks like she's being respectful. If someone is, let's say your boss is responding to you and they seem erratic and they're in the second picture, as a leader, you should probably not show that you're in fear or anything of that sort. So you have to really maintain a professional outlook. So all these different body languages that are presented on this sequence of pictures can kind of give you an idea of what this person is thinking, going through, or what their mindset is. So you really have to be aware on both ends as a sender and receiver of messages, and how other cultures, generations, or anyone that you may work with is interpreting the words you're trying to say. So just big idea, be aware.